Bonjour, je suis not Manly, ici le voyage d'espace je ne sais quoi, and this is the seventh and last planet of the system. This is Nara, this is the monster at the outer edge of the system and its three moons Amos, Enon and Prax. It is over 7,000 kilometers across and has a ridiculous mass. It's basically a super Kerbin. But surface gravity is Kerbin normal. Even with that crazy atmosphere, it's not too bad. One day is about 12 hours, also Kerbin normal, but that year lasts 308 Kerbin years. It is a really slow mover and a pretty wild inclination to make approaching rather difficult. Delta V requirements are very much like Moho to get out to here. Landing is pretty easy with parachutes, but supposedly getting back from the surface is nearly impossible. But we'll see about that. If you can get out here, you have definitely earned bragging rights. There is supposedly a special anomaly on the surface of Nara, and it has the highest science multiplier in the system. Problem though is, it takes a ridiculous amount of time, 50 plus years, and that surface is a trap. Stock engines just won't work out here. We are preparing old Boom Boom and the warp drive with some relay satellites here. This is going to be a series of inner relays for Nara. We'll put that in the or inside the orbit of Amos there. We're using RA-15s because, well, we couldn't fit RA-100s in this form factor, and, well, we used RA-5s over at Eve, so we should probably be able to use 15s here. This is the Nara Moon Rover. It is just for the moons. If you think we're going to try to land this thing on Nara, never mind. This is very much like the Kuiper-built rover, and it is designed for a very similar purpose. It has those vertical landing engines as you've seen before, and a booster for descending to the surface of Enon, and we've learned from our mistakes in the original Kuiper-built rover, we'll be able to take this thing back up to Enon and still dock it with the main mission craft. Finally, we're sending up another Kuiper-built HAB, featuring Chris, Bob, and Doug Kerman. Yeah, we decided to leave the ladies behind for this one. This is going to be the last mission that these guys will undertake. Even so, this is only part one of a two-parter to Nara. The Kuiper-built HAB you've seen before, it has a rovemate on there, although we're not going to rely on the rovemate for surface scans. Even so, we'll just dock this thing. And after some docking, strutting up, and some rebalancing of this craft, we get it ready to eject out to Nara. First thing we do is we eject out to beyond safe distance for the warp drive. And there we go. We'll get out there, and then we'll just warp straight out there. We've left that breadcrumb trail of relay satellites, but that's okay. We're not going to need those because we have a fully crewed craft here. And there we go. Set course for Nara there, Chris. And engage. Come on, why aren't we engaging? There we go. Compared to the 50-year trip this would take, this trip only takes about 15 or so minutes, as long as you have a well enough equipped craft. Now, Nara has an interesting bit of lore behind it. Supposedly you need the ruby slippers to get back. But before we do that, we're going to make an orbit that's roughly in the same shape as Nara's. That way, when we approach Nara at warp speed, we won't have to require so much delta V to close orbit. But about the ruby slippers, yeah, there's no place like home indeed. The atmosphere is so thick, it is 40 atmospheres at datum level, so hopefully we won't have to venture too far low there when we finally get our intended landers for Nara. Yes, I do have a Nara lander and a Nara rover, they're just not here. How are we going to get to the surface and how are we going to get back? Well, that's a mystery for another time. First thing we're going to do though is we're going to match Enon's inclination here, and then we're going to make a roughly circular orbit so that we can get closer to Nara. We'll have still a reasonably circular orbit. Again, our warp drive is in angular momentum mode, so we can get away with this. There we go. A fair bit of delta V to close orbit, but that's okay. Before I close orbit, I figured it was a good idea to look at KerbNet. We do have better implements for this, but hey, good thing we did because we've already found one of the Nara anomalies right there. Just off to the side there. So there are supposedly two objects on the surface of Nara. One will be a random monolith, and one will be that special anomaly that I mentioned earlier. We have brought ScanSat tools along for this one, so with any luck we will be able to find these things, along with finding some reasonably safe places to land. What I'm doing right now is I'm setting up an orbit of about a 4-day period. That way when I deploy the relays, we can just do our typical triangular layout, like we did above Jewel, like we did above Lindor. And as we drop these relays off, the balancing of this craft will improve. Right now Chris is having to fight that helm, but that's okay. As we drop these things off, it'll become a little easier to manage. There we go, 2 hours and 8 days, and then we can drop these relays off. These will work in conjunction with the large relays to make sure we have decent signal coverage in the system. Look at that big old gray rock. We'll get a closer look at that in just a bit. Come on, just a little more. And there we go, 4 days and change. We repeat this process 2 more times. But while we're waiting for this, hey, let's get some science out here. Big reason why we're out here, after all. Nara has the largest science multiplier in the JNSQ system, even up here in high space. Not bad there, not bad at all. That's just ridiculous. It's a little chilly out here though. We're about as far away from the sun as we can get away with, and our surrounding temperature is 4 Kelvin. It can't get much colder than that. Nara is at its apoapsis right now, which is why everything is so dark. I wasn't going to wait 160 years for this thing to come back to periapsis. Anyway, we'll drop off the last of our relays and we should be set here. And there we go. Now what we're going to do is we're going to warp out. That way we can change to a polar orbit while costing a lot less in delta V. All it cost us was a bit of exotic matter. We can regenerate that. And there we go. Once we're low enough, the warp drive safety will kick in, and then we can see about dropping off our ScanSat satellite. Look at this gray rock. I don't believe there are any clouds here. Nara has a hydrogen-helium atmosphere, much like a gas giant. It's pretty much the only way you would have an atmosphere this cold. And there we go. So now we fixed our periapsis to 750 kilometers. We can now drop off our ScanSat satellite. I've got 2 different parts on there. One of them is an altimeter, and one of them is a biome and anomaly scanner. Much like the biome and anomaly scanner we used back at Kerbal. This thing will help us pinpoint the anomalies, so we're not wasting much time driving around for these things. I'm also hoping that the anomalies aren't too low to the ground. Otherwise, we do risk suffering of pressure failure. Look at that. The North Pole is actually fully lit up, so when we go north, we'll be able to see, hopefully clearly, what's up there. In the meantime, we have entered low space. Let's get some low space science. There you go, Bob. Good thing these suits can deal with 4 Kelvin. They'll have to deal with a lot more soon enough. Okay, so we'll close orbit here and then we can begin our scans proper. I had to pack a lot of RTGs on here. I suppose I could have packed on here the small nuclear reactor. It was less expensive, but it was much heavier. Even so, these RTGs should last long enough to help us get a proper surface scan. We're already picking up altimetry and some biome information, although we're on the dark side, we're not getting any biome info yet. But that's okay. Look at what we're having to deal with here. Some of these are really low to the ground, and there is such a contrast between those peaks and those valleys. I really hope the valleys are safe enough for us to travel in when the time comes. My goodness. While we're waiting for that, the boys in the main mission craft are going to warp out over to Amos, and we're just going to cut over to the next episode. While the satellite is doing its mapping of Nara, we're not going to waste any time. We're just going to go straight out to all the moons. There is Amos right there. Look at that. It is almost pitch black. I'll try to up the brightness of these things, but you can only do so much before it looks just wrong. Not to mention that Scatterer still darkens the dark side too much. And we're just going to brute force this here. We'll get as close to Amos as we safely can. We've already picked up an anomaly on the surface. That's what that marker there is for. I'm hoping that Amos is small enough that we can get away with this. Yeah, there we go. We'll just close orbit and we will explore Amos in the next episode. Until then, I'm not Manly. Fly safe.